So when I first got into gravel riding, I basically thought it was just road cycling with a bit of dirt thrown in, but how wrong I was. If you're thinking about getting into gravel or you have just bought your first gravel bike, here are 7 things which I wish I knew before I started riding gravel. Number 1 is to actually know what gravel is. In my eyes, you've got road cycling on one side of the spectrum and then you have got mountain biking on the other. For me, gravel is the gap between the two and is a hybrid between mountain biking and road biking. Now in some countries you have got miles and miles of soft gravel which you can plough through at good speeds, but in the UK that is not quite the case. In the UK especially, I often find we're nipping through bridleways, shared paths, sometimes on the road, sometimes going through a park, and then it could be a woodland or some trail. So it's important to fully understand what type of gravel riding that you will be doing specifically. Number 2 is to realise that gravel bikes are very different from road bikes, and that is for a very specific reason. The first thing is that gravel bikes usually have wider tyres with deeper tread, and that's usually for comfort, traction and going on all sorts of terrain. You'll often find then that the bike has much more tyre clearance, so you can fit wider tyres in there if you wanted. A lot of gravel bikes come standard with 45mm tyres, but a lot of people are now opting for 50 so that they can go on all sorts of different terrain. The fit on a gravel bike is usually a lot different from a road bike. You will often find that the bars sit closer to you and are higher up. Whilst road cycling is about getting low and far for aerodynamics, gravel cycling can often be the complete opposite. The reason being is that comfort and control are a very important factor when it comes to gravel. And on that note, you'll often see that gravel bikes often have flared bars. So the hoods are usually in tight and then the bars flare out to the sides so that on the downhill or the descent, you've got a wider grip and more control of the bike. A lot of gravels often then have rounded seat posts, and the reason for that is so you can fit what's called a dropper post. It is what it says on the tin really, it is a seat post that drops all the way down, and the reason being is that so you can bring the saddle down, lower your centre of gravity and have even more control over the bike on slippery and technical descents. It's a technology that's come across from mountain biking into gravel. Number 3 is that tyre pressure in gravel is way more important than you first think. For example, on my road bike I will often run 70 psi, but on gravel I'm usually between 25 and 35. On gravel you are riding all sorts of different terrain, so you could be riding grass, woodlands, roads, chalk, flint, sand, all sorts. Finding the right pressure then is ultimately a balancing act between not going too high so that you're bouncing all over the place and not going too low that you're prone to punctures and simply are rolling too slowly. You'll often find if the tyre pressure is too high, you will be bumping over the rough terrain and you will feel it jolting through your body, and you could also become more prone to punctures and you will ultimately lose grip. Too low then and you could end up damaging your rim and get what's called pinch punctures if you're running tubes. So finding the right tyre pressure is ultimately a balancing act which you're going to have to somewhat figure out yourself. Number 4 is that it's important to get the right shoes and pedals for gravel riding. When you get into gravel, you will soon realise that you are getting off and on the bike very frequently. So for example, in London, I'm always getting off, opening trails, opening gates on shared bridleways, and ultimately if it's muddy terrain, your cleats are going to become full of mud. What most people do is they usually opt for a mountain bike pedal and then with gravel specific shoes. The mountain bike pedal you can clip in at both sides, and with the gravel shoes then you've got lugs on the bottom of the shoes which stops the dirt going up. You then get more grip in the mud and then you can usually clip into the pedal much easier. Now you can use standard road bike pedals. You will often see some of the pros using these in gravel races, but I think it's important to realise that often the pros are riding dry gravel, very fast gravel, and never usually have to unclip off the bike. That greater surface area of the road bike pedal then is then advantageous to them for power transfer, and they can get away with using that. But in the UK especially, that's usually a lot harder, so most people opt for the gravel shoe with the mountain bike pedal. Number 5 is to know what to bring with you. Gravel rides often take you well off the beaten track, and you will find you're often on a ride and you think, I'll have a look what's down there, and end up miles away from where you intended to be. Because of that, I often take more clothes, more food and more spares than I ever think I needed. For spares, I would suggest taking a multi-tool with a chain link remover tool. That way, if you do rip off your rear mech or anything like that, you can take some links out of the chain and run the chain single speed the whole way. If you're running tubeless, I would suggest taking some plugs so that if you do have a puncture that the sealant doesn't repair, you can plug the hole and get back on the bike moving again. If you're running tubes, bring 1 or 2 inner tubes and just make sure that the tube is the right size. You will need different size tubes for gravel compared to road bikes, so make sure you bring the right size tube with you. For clothing then, I often bring a rain jacket, whatever the weather. Just because it's not scheduled to rain in the UK, that may mean it's still going to rain. But also, if you crash or injure yourself, you're probably going to want a jacket to keep yourself warm whilst you're waiting for recovery. If I'm then doing a very long gravel ride and by myself, I do often quite like to pack a foil. I have once crashed before and ended up stranded waiting recovery and been exceptionally cold due to the weather. So now what I can do, bring a foil, wrap it around me, and that will keep me a bit warmer when waiting rescue. Nutrition then, I usually bring some bars, some gels, water, electrolytes, and usually a credit or debit card so that I can pick up food on the way too. Number 6 is to realise that your saddle can be a bit lower in terms of gravel riding, and that can be a good thing. Again, this one comes down to a balancing act, and you ultimately need to weigh up what type of terrain you're riding and why you are riding that terrain. If you're riding on flat, fast roads, a normal saddle height will be absolutely fine. But if you're riding technical trails and rocky descents, a lower saddle can actually bring your center of gravity down and mean that you get more control on those long, slippery and technical descents. The problem is if you go too low, you will start losing pedal efficiency and power, and then will eventually just burn up your quads. So make sure you find the perfect balance between power and having control over the bike. And number 7 is one I never thought I'd be saying, but it's actually to put a little bell on your bike. The one thing I've realized about gravel is you are often on shared paths, and there will be walkers, runners, hikers, all sorts of people. So putting a tiny little bell like this nog on your bike is perfect for just giving people a gentle reminder that you need to pass without shouting or screaming at them, move left. Now those are the points, but I would just want to finish off by saying gravel is ultimately whatever you make it to be. You could ride your gravel bike on the roads, you could ride it through woodland trails, or you could ride it on fast gravel out in Spain or Girona, whatever you fancy. Now hopefully by watching this you won't make some of the mistakes which I made when I started gravel, but if you found this video useful, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can see more content and enjoy your gravel riding.